What is up, everyone? Welcome to another weekly sports card news video. This one is very interesting because we have two topics with graders and some hanky-panky going on. Number one, it'll be PSA and some fake Michael Jordan autos. Number two, it's going to be SGC with somebody resealing some slabs after patch swapping them. Now, you're going to want to hear my thoughts on that because there's a thing there that not many people know about that I'll remind you on once again. We'll then end the video talking about, prospecting this whole Wander Franco situation, but more importantly, focus in on how I go about approaching my buying and selling, because a lot of people have basically asked that, and it allows me to almost be risk-free with my purchases to avoid situations like this Wander Franco mess. So stay with me for the very end on that one. Now, the first thing I want to talk to is this video that AIH Sports put out a few days ago. I'm going to do a more detailed video on this in a few days, but it essentially relates to a Michael Jordan, autograph card that was, authenticated by PSA, that essentially came back as a fake. Now, some of you might ask the question, well, how did this happen? Because you can see it's been authenticated by PSA right there and then. But this person decided to also get the card graded itself. And when PSA went to grade the card, they obviously looked at the autograph again and said, well, something is up here. Now, what's interesting on this that I need to do a little bit more research on is that there is about 10 others, I want to say, maybe 10 to 20, either side of this serial number that have also been deactivated that were also Michael Jordan authenticated autos. So this speaks to a pretty big problem out at PSA that looks like somebody managed to somehow get some of these fake, autos put through their grading process, their authentication process, I should say, and they've completely missed it. Now, to quickly clarify, a few people in the comments of Raul's video were a bit unsure as to what would happen in this instance. Now, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but PSA have a guarantee in place. So essentially, if you buy a card like this that was previously authenticated or graded by them, and then an issue comes to light that was an incorrect grade or the auto was fake, PSA will reimburse you the money. So from that perspective, you are fine. But what needs to be kept front of mind here is the concern. And the concern is, well, how many other autos are out there in their slabs that have sort of been missed, or how many other things have sort of slipped through the cracks to allow stuff like this to happen. Now, I just mentioned there's a guarantee in place, so you are protected, but if you are the person submitting the card, you are also not protected by that guarantee, which is pretty concerning. And the reason being is because PSA obviously have a policy in place to prevent people from sending in known fakes to get them graded to then do a claim back, right? You are only protected if you are not the original submitter. And that's where the concern is, because if you as a buyer or as a collector have a collection, you send cards in yourself, they get slabbed, you're not protected from that capacity, which is pretty concerning. And it's something that we need to keep front of mind when we're deciding to use services such as this. So stay tuned, because I'm going to give you my thoughts in far more detail in a few days' time. But I just thought I'd bring this front of mind because you've basically had 10 to 15, as I mentioned earlier, slabs be deactivated. Now, PSA typically will deactivate things when, counterfeiting has occurred. People have taken a known authentic card and then they've used that slab based on images online to create fakes. But what's interesting here is that's not noted on the deactivation page. That's usually mentioned that it's associated with a counterfeiting link or something along those lines. In this case, it literally just says it was removed from the database, which looks more like a PSA error than anything else. Now, again, stay tuned for that video because there's a lot more to talk to. I don't want to, speak too long on it because there is so much detail there that I don't want to misspeak or anything like that. So stay tuned for a few days' time. Now, keeping with the theme of hanky-panky and graders, we've got a very interesting one here from Kyle from Wax Museum Podcast, and that relates to a patch-swapped Steph Curry Immaculate card in an SGC slab. So essentially what occurred here, the card on the bottom right, which is numbered out of 49, popped up on social media. Pretty clearly a patch swap card immediately, because you don't typically see patches like that or relics like that in cards of that numbering. So red flags and alarm bells went off immediately. Through a bit of research, he and others since determined that it was actually the card you can see on the top left initially. And what has occurred here is somebody's cracked this open, replaced the relic, put that fake one in, and then resealed it and tried to sell it online. And this raises a few concerns because, there's been a general theme that SGC have some issues around their slabs being very easily tampered with, i.e. easily cracked. Sometimes people can even do it, with their bare hands. So it raised a lot of alarm bells. Now, what Kyle did from there onwards is reached out to the CEO of SGC, who we've talked about many times on this channel being really good at reacting and commenting on things. And Pete basically let Kyle know that SGC have a feature that not many people know about. And they announced it a few years ago, and we did talk to it on this channel. And that is a feature within their cert verification tool, verification, I should say. And what that allows you to do is type the serial number in there. And similar to PSA, when you do that for the more recently graded cards, I think it goes back to like 2018 in some instances, they'll have an image of the card itself when it left SGC as a grader. And when you do that for this particular card, you see the one there on the top left. So pretty easily determines that this card was patch swapped, right? And it's a really good tool. Now, Kyle does take you through that process, so I'll put a link down to that video so he can do it himself. I've shared it before on this channel in the past, but it's a really cool thing that not many people, know about or know to check when they're looking at buying SGC slabs. Now, this sort of thing is not just specific to SGC. We see it happen all the time with BGS and PSA as well. PSA also have, the imagery up there for very recently graded cards. But I just think this is a really, cool feature that helps you as a buyer to prevent and avoid getting scammed in situations like this. And not enough people use it. And when we talk on this channel all the time around, people sort of looking for new ways to take advantage of you as a buyer, or people being too trusting these days to simply buy a card because it was graded, stop for a minute and check these things. Because if you check these cert websites or the cert verifications and all these kinds of things, you're going to be very quickly, alarmed to whether or not an issue is there or not, right? If the card you're looking at in hand matches what's on PSA's, cert page or even SGC's, you're going to be comfortable in that instance, right? Because you're going to know nothing's been tampered with. Now, I can't recall if I mentioned a little bit earlier that, it was pretty easy to spot that one being a patch swap when you first saw it, because you don't typically see patches like that in those kinds of cards. But if I didn't, I just said it then. But again, that's another tip you can be trying to use, in this instance. We've talked to some of these altered card databases in the past. But I think the general consensus to take away from this, outside of using that feature from SGC, is that if you're ever unsure, just reach out to people on Twitter, tag people like Wax Museum Podcast, tag people like myself, Sports Card Radio, Auburn 35. There's many, many others as well. I just named a very small handful because that's all I can think of. But you're going to be helped out if you have any questions with stuff like this, right? There's many people that are knowledgeable and all that sort of stuff. So if you ever had that hesitancy, don't go out there and just buy this sort of stuff without thinking through it, because there are people there trying to take advantage of you, and it's becoming more and more prevalent because it's becoming easier and easier to do. And similar to that train of thought, it goes to how I approach my collecting, because I've talked to this in the past, how, I hate spending money on cards. I hate spending money on things because it's like, from my mind, this stuff could be going towards, savings for my daughter as an example, or could be going to a family holiday. So I hate, buying things, especially when we're in the current market where I still think cards are overpriced, right? They're just pieces of cardboard to me, even though I have an infatuation with them, I should say, and I enjoy collecting them and looking at them, right? There's more important things in life to be spending your money on. To sort of counteract that, because I am a degenerate collector at heart, I can't help myself. And the way I sort of go about it and make myself feel comfortable is I'll basically make my hobby self-funded. And that protects you in instances like this where you've got people sort of scamming you. So if I ended up buying one of those slabs because it is self-funded, at the end of the day, I've just lost profits. Yeah, that money could have still gone elsewhere, but it's different to spending money that you now can't put towards anything else, right? And it also helps in instances with this whole prospecting situation. I don't really prospect all that much outside of me buying cards of players that I like. But when we've got the news now around Wander Franco and those, disgusting allegations, right? If that stuff is true, people that have spent big on his card, even if they, aren't true, right? You're still going to be impacted price-wise, and you've now spent big money. But if you're approaching things and making your hobby self-funded, you're going to be a lot more comfortable to sort of lose that money if you have to, right? It's not going to be the end of the world. It sort of takes the risk out of the hobby. And some of you might say, well, what does self-funding actually mean? It means, if I want to buy a card for my PC, I do one in, one out kind of thing, right? I have a core group of cards that I consider my true PC. Everything else can sort of come and go as I please, because I go through phases like I'm sure you guys do as well. But if I have a core group of cards in my PC, right, and I'm talking cards over, $500 plus, because I'm not a big spender or anything like that, but that's what my threshold would be. If I want to buy something, cool, like maybe this Christian Vieri flawless soccer card that's not going to load, that you would have seen in one of my videos recently, there you can see, gold out of 10, doesn't sign much. When I bought that card, I made sure that I sold a few other things to basically fund it. And it's something that does take time. You've got to be patient. and not a lot of people have the time for that, but those are the kinds of things you want to be doing if you want to avoid this kind of crap. Now, I'll put a link on the screen at some point where I've talked this before in a video, and I had a few people in the comments sort of come after me because I think of it like collecting cards for free, right? I rarely spend out of pocket. I typically have a pretty good eye to find things that I can flip. As you can see behind me, I'm sort of into many different hobbies. There's video games there, vintage stuff, manga, you got, retro video games, I've got vinyl over there, comic books, collectibles. I'm sort of across multiple things, and that allows me to find deals everywhere that I can. I can find things that are a little bit more affordable than others, and then flip those things to then put into sports cards. Now, I'm sort of rambling here. I can put together a more coherent video on this if you guys want. But the key message here is to avoid being scammed by group breakers, to avoid being scammed by, graders and patch shopping and all that kind of stuff, to avoid being scammed or out of pocket, I should say, for idiot athletes that you can't control that then shoot themselves in the foot, that then tank their card prices. You need to be approaching things like this. You don't want to be putting your money into this stuff and spending big money. Number one, if you can't afford it, right? You've got more important things in life to worry about. But even if you can't afford it, you don't want to be throwing money down the drain on things like this, where an athlete or any of those things can come up outside of your control that sort of tank the value on that. And if you can't afford to lose it, don't be spending it. But at the same sort of time, just remember, it's a hobby about fun, right? And it's meant to be something that you appreciate and like to, interact with and all those kinds of things. And this is another element to that to make it even more fun. Now, no, I'm talking in circles now, but that's just generally how I go about approaching things, right? Make it self-funded. It makes it less, guilty for me to spend money on these kinds of things because it is self-funded. And then at the same sort of time, as I've talked to you before, if I ever need to sell them in a down market in particular, because it is self-funded or it's paid for via profits, I'm never going to be sitting there panicking about, I actually can't sell this card right now, even though I've got something to pay for because, I paid $1,000 for it, but it's only worth $200 now. Yeah, I paid $1,000 for it, but because it was, self-funded or, paid for via profits, I can sell it for $200 and still be ahead. And I've talked to that in detail in that video that I referenced earlier. So again, that was very incoherent, but I hope you guys appreciated it. Let me know your thoughts on the topics we did discuss. I spoke about that sealed flawless case in my video from 2 days ago. If you haven't seen that, it was a resealed box. It's pretty concerning, some definite hanky-panky going on there. Please check it out, and then let me know your thoughts on the comments of that video, because I think it's something that needs to not be forgotten about, because it exposes potentially DA Card World. It potentially exposes even Panini with some tampering going on. So there's a lot to talk to. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. As always, let me know your thoughts down below on anything we discussed today, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.